However, just remember, it was the Victorian Premier's fear of losing the Australian Open forever that has seen him bend rules and import more of the virus to make all of this happen. He was very clear about what might happen if they postponed or cancelled the event.
If the Australian Open does not happen in Melbourne, it will happen somewhere else. It'll happen in Japan, it'll happen in China, it'll happen in Singapore. And the real risk then is it doesn't come back. It doesn't come back. So an event that underpins tens of thousands of jobs is a major part of our major events agenda, which in total terms supports more than 250,000 Victorian jobs. Not to mention the fact that we, all of us, as taxpayers, have built a facility that is second to none at roughly at about $1.5 billion worth of investment over a 10-year period. This event is very important to our city and our state.
I like the idea that Dan Andrews is prioritising jobs. I wish he'd done that towards the end of that lockdown, at around about the 90-day mark or maybe the 80-day mark. But the 4 Grand Slam tournaments, and he obviously has been given a bum steer, these tournaments and their locations, London, Paris, New York and Melbourne, was set in stone by the International Tennis Federation in 1924-25. And as former tennis great and Liberal MP John Alexander told us last night, that can never be changed.
The historic matter of fact, Jack Crawford won the Australian and the French Wimbledon, went to the US Championship, had won 12 events in a row, and Alison Danzig, a journalist for the New York Times, wrote that the 4 countries that had won the Grand Slam, that their national championships, that had won the Davis Cup, that their 4 national championships should constitute the Grand Slam because the game of the day played off court was bridge. Jack had won 12 tournaments straight. If he won the US Championship, it was 13, the Grand Slam, and that's why our 4 majors are called the Grand Slam.
That is immovable history. Immovable history. So what is the urgency and fear over holding this tournament when you've got to import players, staff and their positive COVID condition from areas in the world where the virus is rampant? Back again to Chairman Dan, who awkwardly blamed his gut feeling on moving mountains to hold the Open.
We're having a major event that if we don't have it, well, somebody else will. And it won't be coming back.
Who told you that?
And I've made that, well, logic tells you that.
No, what credible tennis person suggested that we're at risk of losing the Australian Open as a Grand Slam event?
I've had many different discussions with many different people.
Who's one?
Well, I'm not going into the private discussions that I have with people, Chip, and I'm not also going to... If I say to you that my logic tells me this, well, then that answers your question.
There's just no one that I can find in tennis that agrees that Melbourne's at risk of losing the Australian Open as a Grand Slam.
Well, again, let me just go back through this. I've done it a few times. I'll do it again. The Grand Slam status of this tournament is not part of the contract.
It's not based on any advice from any learned member of the tennis fraternity. He didn't bother asking the question. He certainly wouldn't have asked John Alexander, of course, who's a dirty Tory, to Dan. And so that's why he's extremely willing to hold the Open when most countries wouldn't even touch it. It's Dan's logic. The same logic, no doubt, that helped him install security guards in hotel quarantine, then refused to accept responsibility for it, and we know how that turned out. That's the logic that runs Victoria.